All right, so thanks for coming to Accelerate. I hope you guys learned a lot of new things in the past 2 days. My name is Luigi. I'm a product manager for the CLM. If you guys missed the keynote this morning, come by the booth. The next gen CLM, I was part of the owner for that. Anyway, I'm gonna introduce two guest speakers. The first one is Prasan Dubey, and then Said Kasim. I hope I pronounced their name correctly. A bit of a background. Prasan is the president and CEO of Sumati, the leading global provider of contract management. They have implemented migrated over 5.5 million contract documents into CLM repositories across all contract types and industries. Sumati also has over 300 CLM experts, including attorneys and Aptus CLM certified developers. The company is headquartered in Portland, Oregon. Prasan is also the co-author of industry-leading books such as Litigation Readiness and The Generalist Counsel. He holds a Bachelor in Economics and MBA in Finance from the University of Chicago. Please welcome Prasan Dubey. The next guest is Syed Kasim. He's a program leader with experience leading enterprise system projects across a wide array of business initiatives in multiple industries. His core competency is combining his deep technical knowledge with business analytics and change management to drive key initiatives across the enterprise. This background is what led Ecova to hire Syed as the leader of Ecova Contract Management System Development and Rollout Project. Prior to Ecova, Syed spent over 5 years as a Microsoft Technologies analyst, consultant, and also trainer. At Ecova, Syed successfully led the rollout of Aptus Contract Lifecycle Management back in July 2016 and is currently working on the expansion of the system in 2017. Syed wears multiple hats, literally and metaphorically. Please welcome Syed. You guys.
Great.
Yeah.
Do we need that, or
No.
can you hear me when I just speak?
Okay.
Brilliant. Well, first of all, you should all be congratulated for being present at the very last talk of this particular track. So you must really, really want to be here. So thank you for that. Secondly, if any of you have ever had trouble with names of people from any part of Asia, you're hereby vindicated. I was laughing because what Luigi didn't tell you is his last name is Aditya Rama. And what's even more vindicating of everybody here, if you've ever had trouble, is the three of us, being from generally the same part of the planet, had to check with each other as to how we pronounce our names. So if you've ever felt intimidated, don't, because we have equal challenge with it. The other thing I would tell you is that that title, when I looked at it again, we should have managed expectations. It sounds like a panacea. It sounds like contract analytics will do everything for you. So on that related point, there are no aha moments in this talk. What we're going to share with you are things that you've probably heard before, but have been put in practice by Syed and his team, and have in fact worked. So hopefully the message here is things that you've heard before actually do work, and this is an example of that. And the last thing I'll tell you here before we actually get into the substance, and we have 82 PowerPoint slides, so it's going to be really, really interesting. We actually don't. Is all of this information and more is contained in this 6-page write-up, which is actually available in the back. So there's Raveen Sentiraja, there's another good name, and Michael Tufel. Thank you, Michael, for having Michael as your name. So they actually have copies of this, and if you're interested, there's a lot more detail in these 6 pages than even what we'll share with you here. You can read it at your leisure, or if you want to leave now, you can take it and go get a beer or something. But in any case, we'll just go through this today. We've already gone through introductions. We'll talk briefly about our companies just to give you some more context about why we're here and why we are telling the story today. We'll describe the state of the state at Ecova, the contract analytics state, the opportunities that presented and the challenges to capture those particular opportunities. And then we'll go through the foundational elements that Ecova put in place in order to actually go through and capture those opportunities and overcome those challenges. And then we'll talk a little bit about the results achieved and the path forward. So hopefully we'll tell the cohesive story in the next few minutes. And we'll try to finish early. Hopefully we'll have some interaction, which I know the presentations so far have gone up until the end. We'll try to finish early, so hopefully we can have some interaction. So Syed and Prashant, so if you want to talk about Ecova.
Yeah, so Ecova is an energy services company that specializes in blending technology and data with people and insights in providing energy-related services that help with reduction of usage as well as saving money on potential bills and spend. And it spans across utilities such as energy, water, waste, etc. So that's just a little bit of a background on Ecova and our services, as you'll see, and when we cover a little bit more about our setup and our contracts and what we're dealing with, you'll get a little bit more information there.
Another thing about Ecova, which is very impressive to me, is they're a subsidiary of an $85 billion global energy company. And the mission of this organization is really around sustainability. So it's a really feel-good mission. It makes you feel really good. I know that Syed believes in the mission in addition to the content of work. So I'm personally impressed by it. Sumati, I think Luigi told you a little bit about who we are. We're focused exclusively in the contract management space. Contract migration and managed services around contract management solutions is our expertise. We've been in business about 7 years and we're headquartered in Portland. So no more chess beating. If you have questions about us, you can come to our booth or talk to us later about it. So let's talk a little bit about the state of the state at Ecova and why we call it complex. All right, there we go. A nice graphic to talk about complexity. So why is the state of the contract analytics state at Ecova complex? Syed talked a little bit about the core business of the company. It's represented by about 60 different service lines that are all bundled. Moreover, these service lines are delivered to over 800 industrial and commercial clients in contracts that are extremely highly negotiated. So negotiation intensity of these contracts is very, very high. In addition, the starting point for a lot of these contracts are templates that came from a multiple acquired company. So the language is different. The structure of the starting point is extremely different. And there's a tremendous amount of hierarchy. Every single one of these contracts has hierarchy. Aside from an NDA, most contracts have hierarchy. These contracts have a lot of hierarchy. They're masters, they're amendments, there's SOWs. And these child documents don't just do things like reset the term of the contract. They reset pricing, they reset performance clauses. So it's a very multi-dimensional relationship that creates a tremendous amount of complexity in the organization.
Yeah, so just to give you an example of the type of contract or services we provide, we might have an existing contract with a city, in any given state. And what we do is basically manage their facilities. So all their facility usage bills around electricity, water, waste will come to us. We take the data from those, we pay those bills, we take the data from those bills, we build reports in terms of usage, and then we provide additional consulting services on how businesses can be more efficient, more sustainable, and better use their resources and consumption. So that's the breadth of some sort of what we can do. And in context of that, imagine the fine lines around how we're delivering those services, what some of those delivery terms are, how we're going to pay those bills, if something gets paid late, who's responsible for it. So there's very, very small details that have to be paid attention to so that delivery can take that and deliver on it. So like Prashant said, the contracts are vast, they're heavy, and there's a very, very fine relationship between different terms and information, whether it's in the context of hierarchy or the document themselves. So just a little context of the type of documents or contracts we are talking about.
Complexity creates opportunity if you view it that way and you're not intimidated by it. So the opportunity that Ecova saw in this complexity, and actually this was anecdotally observed. They observed the client-facing teams doing this contract document by contract document, pouring through the actual document itself to identify performance clauses, identify how to have a more productive conversation with their client, how to more efficiently onboard a client when they become a new client. How do they actually go in and identify all the elements in the contract which create revenue for Ecova and make sure they capture all the revenue contained in those contracts. So this was actually good stuff that was happening contract by contract. The opportunity was, how do you do this at a larger scale with more automation across the organization?
Yeah, so this slide kind of does a good job of setting our goals, what we had intended with the system itself. So for client management, delivery, salespeople, the big goal was to enhance visibility and increase efficiency in terms of how easily they can access contracts, look up relevant data points, recognize the relationships between the different types of contracts or subcontracts, and then be able to provide better service and turnaround time to our clients when they're working with them. For legal, obviously the intent or the incentive was to be more efficient, to turn contracts quicker, and to just be a more wholesome, well-rounded business partner. And then finally, from a billing and financial point of view, we know there's a lot of valuable data in our contracts, and we wanted to be able to access it, build analytics, so that we could capture additional revenue, and again, improve the business bottom line.
Another key point is oftentimes legal departments are looked at as cost centers. Imagine this is an opportunity to actually be a revenue center and enable the organization to drive more top line. It's actually a pretty good objective for a corporate legal department. There were challenges in capturing this opportunity, right? Some of these challenges are things that you've seen in your organization. The subject matter experts that actually understand the content of these contracts couldn't really be asked to roll up their sleeves because they have day jobs that are in fact really challenging, right? And you couldn't take this challenge and throw it over the wall to an army of temps because the data integrity that would drive the analytics was so paramount that you actually had to have a process that had rigor and QC in it so that you got a good result to be able to use as a foundation for analytics.
Yeah, so to that point, like Prashant pointed out, people were always key. Recognizing the value in who needs access, what type of access is needed, what are the exact type of information that they are looking to gather out of these contracts, that was a critical piece of the puzzle. And right from the word go, we kind of focused on that. We kind of focused on getting the data right, getting some of those fundamental elements, because I know in the previous couple of sessions they've talked about migration, of data from one system to another, and then there's a whole facet of actually extracting the data from contracts and having it in some kind of repository where it can serve some purpose. So again, those were some key challenges, and we recognized that, and we kind of started the path early, and we laid a good foundation, and we were able to build on it.
Another element of the challenge in the contract universe was there was actually a very positive element. Every single contract document related to these customer relationships were in one place. So that's a lot more than a lot of companies can say. Sometimes they're in shared drives, in a document management system, in hard drives, sometimes in paper and file drawers. Ecova actually had them in one storage location. There was no metadata. There was no articulated hierarchy, so there was no parent-child relationship articulated in the documents stored on there, but at least they knew that they captured almost 100% of the documents related to these sell-side contracts. There are three foundational elements in the program. The first foundational element was having a technology platform to enable the automation of this process.
Yeah. So me and my boss, who you saw earlier in one of the slides, we're big believers in leveraging technology to drive efficiency and improve business and improve our workflow. So like I mentioned earlier on, we did the due diligence of extracting the data, capturing the data, recognizing what that data is by working with key stakeholders, and we'll cover that a little bit more. But then we wanted to be able to do more, and that's where finding the right platform was key. So we looked around, we did our research, and then we finally settled on Aptus. And some of the primary reasons for working with Aptus was that, as you've all by now heard and know, it is the market leader when it comes to CLM. It provides the most flexible, extensive, and robust capabilities in terms of contract lifecycle management. It had mobile support, advanced reporting and analytics that are built out of the system with the flexibility to be able to enhance or extend them per your business needs. Another key component for us was obviously investing or working with a partner that had the long-term stability to be able to continue providing us services in the long term. Like Prashant mentioned, we are owned by NG, which is a global company, and we look at whatever we do as essentially something that we want to be able to scale. So other affiliates, other partner companies or sister companies that work within the NG umbrella should be able to replicate the model that we were putting in place. And that was always something that we had at the back of our mind. And another reason why we picked Apttus. And then finally, just a company that had an ecosystem that we could work with, a related partner that fit within our budget, that we were able to execute on depending on our needs.
Second foundational element, creating a high integrity repository. Syed?
Yeah, so going back to that idea about getting the data right to begin with, I think what we did earlier on was we outlined the project, we recognized these are the key stakeholders across the company, the different groups, and then the individuals within those groups. So we recognized delivery, we recognized finance, we recognized onboarding and client services, and then we engaged with those stakeholders and we recognized, okay, what is the data that you're looking up? So right now, if you go pull a contract into your day-to-day function or interaction, what is it that you're actually looking up? 9 out of 10 times, it was usually a specific set of data points that were relevant to them. So we recognized that, and we invested in a resource that was dedicated to being able to kind of pull that data manually. So that was a lot of effort, but again, a call that we made that was important and has served us really well. The other thing was being able to kind of tie in that data to a business function, right? So if it's being driven by stakeholders and serving a function, then that data has a long-term sort of life cycle where it relates to whatever we are delivering on and whatever we are capturing. So right now in our system, we have about 350 different metadata fields across the different types of contracts that we work with. That's given the number of our contracts and subcontracts and amendments, et cetera, that translates into somewhere over 2 to 2.5 million data points that have actual data that we are able to use to build analytics and drive reports and actions. And the final and most important thing is the accuracy of the data itself. So we strive for anywhere between 95 to 100% accuracy, and we test ourselves. We do random sampling and kind of check the accuracy of the data in there. So at last check, we were at about 95%, and that's kind of what's up there.
A couple of things to talk people back from ledge. 350 metadata fields is on the high end of the number of metadata fields. So even if you go across your contract types, so the level of detailed analytics, the multidimensionality of Ecova's contracts are manifested in the number of metadata fields. But I think a really important point here, so if there's sort of one key takeaway that we'll give you, I hope those colors aren't hard to see, but what Syed was describing in terms of stakeholders buying in is a concept that we call a metadata map. And so it's a term of art, but it's really a fundamental concept, which means every single metadata field needs to have a reason to exist, right? When we go into organizations, we talk to people about metadata, it becomes a wish list of things people want to track without people really understanding what the business purpose is. So creating a metadata map, which isn't really rocket science, it's really starting at the top by saying, who's going to benefit from this? Who are the stakeholders that are involved? It could be a role, it could be a named individual. What, in fact, is their business purpose for being engaged in this effort? And what's the driver for that? And how does that driver manifest in a particular metadata field? So if you can map that all the way up, a few virtuous things happen. Number one is you have somebody that's accountable for that actually says, I'm going to make business use of the effort that's going to go into gathering this, but furthermore, keeping it evergreen. Because you do it for your legacy contracts, you have to do it for new agreements that you put in place. Somebody has to expend effort, so if there's no business value and nobody being involved in that, it's going to be hard to keep it evergreen. The other reason is that you can determine if it's objective or subjective and the level of effort for each one that it's going to take to maintain it or extract it from a particular agreement. Is there a certain amount of interpretation, or is it straight through extracted like an effective date or an expiration date? Or if it's something related to a performance clause that needs to be interpreted. Having a metadata map is going to be of huge utility to you. So if there's any one takeaway we'll have you walk away from here is create one. You'll have a tremendous amount of utility from it. Foundation number 3.
Yeah, so the final sort of element that we wanted to highlight is just having a very solid project plan. So an approach that's effective, that doesn't kind of force you to try and do too much. And I know you have heard different approaches to this piece of the puzzle. For us, it was obviously recognizing the fact that we had data in another system, a legacy system, where we essentially had a repository where we had mined all of this data. So the first element of being able to build out a successful platform was architecting it in a way that it absorbed the key data points. So we were able to do a successful migration from the previous repository into the new system. We spent a lot of time building an architecture that was sort of a little bit of a middle ground, because the legacy system was static, kind of heavy in terms of customization, not nimble or agile. With the new system, we recognized that it had a specific flow, it had a specific purpose that we could build on. So I had to walk the fine line of building an architecture that absorbed the data from the previous legacy system, but at the same time allowed us to take advantage of it going forward with the new functionality that Aptus has to offer. So we built an architecture that kind of facilitated both sides of that line. We did a lot of test migration, make sure the data was kind of coming across the way we intended. Then we finally, migrated the data, did a lot of QA and testing. Then we gradually, in bite-sized chunks, started to roll out some functionality on top of that layer, that foundational layer of data, of that data repository that we mentioned earlier. So we started with the NDA auto generation, where our salespeople or people across the business are able to go in and create an NDA for a client and auto sort of generate it and send it to the contact that they're working with. And then we have gradually kind of moved into additional automation. So being able to amend an existing agreement by pulling data from an opportunity and auto-creating that form, that amendment form that you might work with, and making sure it kind of follows along whatever our guidelines are, and putting in place a process around it, leveraging the whole redlining capabilities of the system, where all the versions are being tracked in a centralized way, and you're able to really get the goodness out of the system by tracking, okay, what is getting negotiated, what is changing, where did we start from, where did we end up? So that's kind of where we are in terms of our rollout. We're just at the brink of rolling this functionality out. We're going to accrue analytics and then use that to drive growth, to drive the conversation a little bit with sales and other teams. So to say, hey, this is what's going on when you're selling, or when you're negotiating, or when you're redlining. This is the outcome, or this is why it takes so long. Whatever that conversation needs to be, you have real data to be able to drive that. And again, I know you have heard enough about data already in the last few sessions. And then we have future milestones that we have also put in place that are, again, going to continue to drive our rollout and implementation of the system. And then there's another key layer to talk about, which is the continuous improvement model of making sure that you're constantly moving, you're constantly adjusting to your business's growing needs. Because think about it, whatever requirements I might have gathered 2-3 years ago are not necessarily the requirements of the business today. So a system that can adapt to that is very, very critical, and you have to stay proactive about being able to adjust that. So that's where we're coming from. Another key aspect of it is obviously finding the right fit in terms of the managed services or your partner that's going to help you drive that. So we were very lucky and fortunate to find Sumati, who were able to work within whatever our financial projections or sort of budget we were working with. So the whole context of a fixed price per month based on whatever our roadmap was and how we wanted to define that was critical. Having a dedicated team of Apttus certified Salesforce developers to work with, so that we can morph or develop or customize or sort of set the system the way it fit our needs. Just the fact that some of the team members are offshore, so you're kind of constant work happening when it's downtime here and uptime there, or vice versa. And then finally, just the agile model of where we are continuously iterating and improving based on feedback, based on testing, based on information that we gather.
I think the point that Syed made about the roadmap is that the practical value of it when you engage a company like us is that we actually own the business objective along with the client. So it's in a time and materials relationship, it's you give me a project and you pay me based on the effort that I expend. In this situation, we actually challenge a client to articulate a roadmap, because then we can say, if we're going to provide you a long-term managed service, we'll commit to a fixed economic model, easier for you to manage your budget, and for us to jointly sign up to what the business objectives are. So that ownership makes it a lot easier. So do a roadmap not just for internal discipline, but you'll actually save a lot of money by being able to productively engage a service provider, whether it's us or anybody else, because you can articulate to them what you want to achieve and hold them accountable to signing up to the same goals. So, what results were achieved?
So, kind of going back to that slide of what we were setting out to do, these are a couple of quotes from our VP in Sales and Client Management and then Onboarding. The VP basically highlights the fact that she's able to quickly and easily access contract data, look up the information that she needs so that she can engage better, more efficiently, quickly with the client, whether it's for cross-selling, upselling, a new potential prospect, whatever scenario they might be working with, and then enhance the whole customer experience, the customer delivery experience that we were trying to strive for. And then from an onboarding perspective, once we have a contract signed, our onboarding team basically looks at the contract, recognizes what the services are, how we're going to deliver them, and starts working with getting all of the pieces set up so that we can successfully onboard the client. Now, with the turnaround time in terms of once a contract gets signed and how soon it's available in the system, which can be anywhere between a day to 2 days, they're able to quickly go in, look at the contract in sort of a timely manner, and then get all of the moving pieces set up so the client can successfully onboard and we have a smooth, successful onboarding experience. So those are just some of the examples. Obviously, there are others that you can tie into revenue. So kind of going back to the point of revenue capture, one of the things is we recognize that our contracts have language, and most contracts, even with Aptus or anywhere that you might have seen, have that ability to increase fees over a certain period of time that are driven by CPI and other metrics that you want. So just being able to kind of look up that kind of clauses across a subset of your contracts and then implement or enhance that, that's the type of revenue generation that we were referring, that there is a lot of value in the data that lives in your contract. Being able to take that, build reports, and then drive that revenue is really the success metric that we have worked off of.
So what's the path forward? You guys have probably seen ad nauseum the Aptus pyramid that says repository at the bottom, continuous improvement. This is actually a living, breathing example of it. By creating a high integrity repository, what Syed and Coba are able to do is now get more credibility from the organization to automate the front end. And that's really the next step, is to create more automation at the front end of contract creation and roll it across the organization.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's it. We're 3 minutes before the end, as we promised. Happy to entertain questions or release you to the bar if that's what you wish to do. And please, there are case studies there if you want to grab one on your way out and learn more about this. So,
thank you.
Thank you.
So ladies and gentlemen, that's our show at Legal Luminary. But wait, there's more. Accelerate's not quite over. We've just heard from one great CEO, and we have a half a dozen more CEOs who want to tell you about building your own personal and professional brand in the main stage, starting in just a couple minutes. You can grab some sweets and head in there. So please do grab a case study. I want to thank the guys from Immersive Pro. You've been awesome. Really, really appreciate it. And thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Thanks, man.
Thanks.
It was good.
Yes. Thank you.